Hi, this is the final video for MGT584 Leadership in Teams Assessment 4, which in some places it's referred to as 3B, but it's definitely Assessment 4, Leadership and Group Dynamics in a Virtual Team. Okay, so the value of this is 30%. It's due on the 11th of October. So you've got nearly a month to write this up after your PK. It's 3,000 words again. This is going to bring together your observations, experiences and reflections in regard to your virtual team and the leadership you have observed, shaped and participated in through the session. You'll integrate theory and practice to demonstrate what you have learned throughout the session. So if you've build a really strong theoretical framework at the beginning in your second assessment, and then if you've and a strong reflection, and then with your PK presentation with your group, likewise built on this really should be an easy last assessment for you to do, because it just pulls together all of those things to actually, make sure that you've actually built on your learning through the session. You're asked to look back on your experiences of leadership in teams, so you'll have even more experiences after completing the PK presentation. And the group dynamics. As you engaged in this task of preparing the PK, you should focus on 4 main areas, okay? The first area is a critical analysis of group dynamics across the various stages of team development. And you'll talk about those stages in your second assessment too. A critical analysis of leadership styles and practices. So very much this will be where you compare and contrast literature on team leadership and teams. Detailed recommendations on what could be done to improve performance of the team going forward. And remember, this is your individual work, so you're not sharing this with others, so you can be as honest, but in a constructive way. Okay? Reflection on your own role in the team. So you might reflect and think that I'm a driver, or I'm a really quiet person, and I stepped out of my comfort zone to act in a different way. You might find different leadership abilities as you work through this team, and so you might find that you've got other roles that you didn't realize you had before. Your personal learning and your leadership skills you have identified that you wish to further develop, because this is a continuous learning journey. So as you go through your course, whichever course you're doing, you need to be building on what you're learning. Each unit isn't just a new unit, a new subject. This is a journey, a leadership journey, a practitioner journey that you're on. So you, as a result of doing each unit, identify where you would like to develop more skills. And look, some of that might be more reading or more writing. You should use a minimum of 8 academic sources to add depth to your discussion. So that's 8 sources for 3,000 words. That's really minimum for me. If you want to get above a credit, you'd have 12 at least, and drawn from more widely than just the subject. But you will find a lot of materials in the readings across the subject topics to use. Okay? There are a plethora of resources. So getting back to critical analysis and thinking critically. So when we think critically, we are being active. We are not passively accepting everything we read and hear. So we don't just do a descriptive analysis of what we've seen or what we've read. It's not a description. We question things, we evaluate them, we make judgments, we find connections, and we categorize things. We build arguments. Okay? And you build arguments from the literature and from the theory, but also from practice as an example. Okay, so you need to be able to bring those two together. It means being open to other points of view, and it includes it means being open to a point of view and not being blinded by your own biases, which we quite often are. In researching and analysing leadership practice, it includes asking questions, identifying problems and solutions, relating theory to practice, as I've said so many times, stating an argument and supporting it with evidence, making comparisons and evaluating. Okay? So that's what I'm looking for, and to get a distinction or above, you need to do that. Presentation. Again, in the same report format. The title page, include the URL to your CSU ThinkSpace if you have a CSU ThinkSpace. Executive summary, a table of contents, introduction, suggested section headings. These are suggested only. So each of the 4 things that you have to do, the critical analysis of group dynamics, the critical analysis for leadership styles and practices, your detailed recommendations, and your reflection on your own role. This section serves as a conclusion to your report, and as I say always, write in the first person. This is about you. When you write, the author said this and the author said that, I question whether you're actually engaging as yourself in this practice. You can see further notes on being reflective in the resources under, I think, Assessment 2. So requirements. Please follow this format and submit your assessment as a Word document with a cover page, student number and assessment title, including page numbers. Always put page numbers in, okay? Put your student number in as well. Things do go astray. And for MBL students, the ThinkSpace URL, as I've said before. And I do check all assessments in plagiarism, as I've said before, and this is the enrolment key and the ID if you want to check your work beforehand. Because sometimes you'll check your work and think, oh, hell's bells, this looks like, I've copied and pasted too much stuff. Sometimes it's when you don't quote things. Sometimes a high Turnitin result might come in when you do a lot of quoting. So what you need to do is you need to look at the report and what the matches are as well. Okay? It takes a while to get used to this. I'm still getting used to it, but it's an important piece, and it's really important that you do consider the implications of plagiarizing and and we've had issues across the university sector at the moment, and we've recently had a letter from the Quality Standards Organisation from the federal government, and there's a lot of contract cheating going on now, and that means you pay for someone else to do your assessment for you, and there are ways that we can check that as well. I just need to let you know that it's quite easy to follow up whether that's happened. So don't get into the habit of doing that. This is about you. This is about your own practice as a leader or as a manager or administrator or as a coach. It's important that you own your work and that you're on your journey of learning yourself. Okay? Can't emphasize that enough. So the marking criteria, I rabbit on about this all the time, but look at it. You've got the critical analysis of group dynamics, the critical analysis of leadership styles. Look down at each of these things. So you really have to be quite outstanding and insightful. Using a lot of literature to support your arguments if you want to get a distinction or above. Your analysis could be solid and sound, a credit. If it's just descriptive, much more likely to be a pass. If there's no description or if you don't do the task, obviously it'll be a fail. Then your recommendations for improving the performance. So theory used is insightful. So you really use the theory underpinning this to support your recommendations. The reflection again needs to be insightful and needs to really be concrete and specific as well, and genuine. The referencing, as I've said in each of the other assessment videos, no grammatical errors or typos for a high distinction. The referencing at APA style has to be completely correct. For a distinction, maybe a few typos. Correct referencing. If your referencing is really, really poor, you'll most likely get a pass. You may get a low credit. If your writing if there's a lot of typos, a lot of grammatical errors, paragraph and sentence structures need working on, you'll get a pass, maybe even a fail. If there's no referencing at all, or the referencing is not, lots of errors, lots of issues, you most likely fail. Very rarely do I have master's students failing. We put a lot of support in. I've got academic learning skills advisors coming to support you. There are a lot of resources to support you. The feedback that I give you from each of the assessments will really support you to achieve. So don't worry too much about this. But this is the last assessment, so I'm not expecting any fails. So as I always say, post your questions to the discussion forum, or you can phone or email me. My phone hours, as I've said before, are 10 to 12 on Mondays and 3 to 5 on Thursdays. So I look forward to looking at these final assessments. I know that they will show significant learning in this subject. There is a vast amount of material in this subject. It's a very exciting subject because most of the leadership that we do is in teams. So I wish you well. Look forward to receiving these and hope that this has been useful.